Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are on the planet, and welcome to this week's Horizon X. I'm Charles, Executive Leadership Coach based in Hong Kong, and I'm joined by Damien, my co host today. Damien, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do.
Hi, Charles. Good evening to you. Good morning. Good day to everyone watching. So I'm Damien Rhodes. I'm an executive and career coach and talent strategist. My background is 24 years in executive recruitment and over 18 years coaching and leadership between us. And I'm also the founder of Talent Diagnostic Solutions.
Outstanding. And you're currently based in?
I'm based in the UK, so it's early morning here. I'm on my second coffee already.
And outstanding. And how many years were you living in Hong Kong? I can think two stints, right?
I was living in Hong Kong for 12 years. There were other shorter stints, but 12 years is the main one.
Okay. Great. And a former.
I'm a former monk, believe it or not. So I went from being a monk to management consultant. So when I've advised people about their CVs, I often say to them the weirdest CV I've ever seen is my own one, where I sent a CV to a job with the word monk on. And bizarrely enough, the person at the management consulting firm knew the monastery, knew my background, and I still got the job. So it was amazing how being authentic can sometimes pay off.
Oh, very good point. The human side, very good point. That's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So today we're talking about how AI is revolutionizing talent acquisition. And we are going to go through a series of slides here and talk about what are some of the things that are happening. And we have a guest calling in from Singapore. Thanks for joining us today. And just keep the comments coming where everyone is calling in from or where you're watching from. It's great to have you join us. This topic, how AI is impacting talent acquisition, is just a gigantic topic. It's monstrous. We'll only just really scratch the surface in the next couple of or the next 60 minutes as we go through what we have to share today. And let's just get right into it. Now, one of the things that we've talked about in the past is the AI adoption, maturity adoption curve. And I'm going to very quickly just jump down. This should be that slide here. This is the, I'll get Damien and I out of the way. So this is a very simple AI maturity model that we've talked about the last couple of weeks, because sometimes we refer to the different companies or people being in different stages. And the latest research coming out is that a lot of companies are, particularly in Hong Kong and APAC, are in stage 1, stage 2 with aspirations to get into stage 3, but they've not yet made that journey. Whereas a year ago, they might have thought they would have been able to make that journey. They've encountered some resistance and some difficulties making that journey. And a couple of weeks ago, we talked about what some of those problems were. So today we might refer, the reason I put this up is because we might refer to stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at different points in the presentation. But as we get going here today, we're just going to zero right in on talent acquisition. And if you have any ideas in the audience, please feel free to let us know any ideas you have around what you've seen happening in the market, because this is a huge topic. And what I think one of the things about AI is that there's open source and there's closed sourced AI, and there are a lot of startups that are out there that are innovating technology and innovating uses of AI in the workforce. And so we want to hear all about that. Any good ideas you've heard about, any best practices you've heard about, please offer them up and jump in and let us know. And then we've also got Madoon joining us. Madoon, it's great to see you today. Thanks for leaving a comment. And Madoon and I worked together years ago at Juniper Networks. Juniper was a very, very special company, and the camaraderie amongst the Juniper staff alumni is amazing. A former finance individual, I think he was the CFO for a while, has just left Juniper, and he announced that he's leaving after 27 years, and it was like a gigantic Juniper reunion with literally, I think he's up to 700 comments now of people wishing him well as he departs for the next season of his life. So that was a special time when Meduna and I worked together at Juniper Networks, a great team. Let's jump in, Damien, and have a look at what we have to offer. Now, I mean, let me ask you this question, Damien. Do you think there are only any go-to organizations out there that you can rely on for AI expertise? So you hear something maybe out there in the marketplace and you wonder, is that true? Is that really what people are seeing in the AI space or in the talent acquisition space? And you want to decide, you want to verify that information. Do you have any go-to places that you would go to verify information?
No specific go-to place. I would look at multiple places to look at it. So, for example, you'll often hear discussion about a particular AI tool and even criticism of an AI tool. But then if you look at other sources, you'll find out the information may be 6 months out of date, where it could have changed significantly in that time. So no one go-to place I'd look at, but I would look at multiple sources. How about you, Charles?
I agree with you. I would go to multiple sources, and online there probably are multiple sources that I could go to. But the one place where I know the leading edge is happening when it comes to AI recruitment is actually with LinkedIn. Actually, when it comes to AI, using AI as an entrepreneur, using AI as an individual on LinkedIn, using AI to generate business, generate revenue. And I think one of the people on LinkedIn I have huge respect for is Shanae Moret. I've mentioned her before. She is very disciplined about learning about AI. She's very, very generous about how much she shares about AI. She really gets the AI game, especially if you're using LinkedIn as a tool. So that's one resource that I would go to. If I really had a question, I might ask her a data point and get her to validate it, or her sister Lanai. But the one place that I would definitely go to would be, actually, ironically, LinkedIn. And I think the team at LinkedIn are very switched on. It makes sense. We know that Microsoft is one of the leading companies in the AI space. Microsoft owns LinkedIn as much as they allow them to operate under their own brand and pretty autonomously. They do own LinkedIn. So, one of the ways you could look at it is that Microsoft is, innovating all the AI ideas, and LinkedIn is taking those ideas and applying them into the marketplace and applying them across the LinkedIn platform. So I have a lot of confidence in what LinkedIn says. They get real-time data. They've got 1 billion users, so they've got a or members, as they would say. So they've got a massive data set. So during our presentation today, I'm going to share some statistics from LinkedIn, which are publicly available. So this is not something that they've shared with me that I'm now turning around and pumping out. This was something they sent out on a mailing list a couple months ago, and you can click. It's an executive summary. You can click through the link. I'll post the link in the comments later. So if people want to read the detailed report, they can do that. But before we jump into that, let's look a little bit on the big picture on AI here. And I'm going to go to a comment that we came up last week. AI won't replace humans, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI. And that statement was made by Jeffrey Hinton, considered the father of AI. He spoke at a conference this week or last week in the United States about some of his concerns with AI. He advised the conference that he spoke to as one of the ways to risk mitigate the long-term risk of AI taking over the planet is to train the AIs to have maternal and paternal instincts. That's about all I know about that. I read the first few paragraphs of that particular article. So a lot of people are worried about AI replacing their jobs. They should be more worried about falling behind on the skill set, and then the people who have AI skill sets will be taking their jobs. I think that's the real risk. Any idea the fastest growing job title Damien,
The
according to
fast growing job title on
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, according to LinkedIn. And we got a friend here. Hello from Tokyo. Excited to hear Damien's insights. So, are you
Hi,
a
David.
person?
How are you?
Yeah. Thanks for
We, we,
joining us,
we
Damien.
David, thanks for joining us, and good to have you here. And it'd be good to have your views on this as well.
Fastest growing job title. I'll put you out of your misery, Damien. It is Artificial
AI
Intelligence
engineer.
AI Engineer. Is ranked number 1 in the United States, ranked number 1 in India, ranked number 1 in Singapore, and top of the list for 15 other countries. So that has not what I think people would have predicted a couple of years ago. They probably
No.
would have thought something else would happen. So let's move on to another shot here from Albert Wolf, who spoke at the Hong Kong CHRO conference. Asia HRM hosted a conference 2 weeks ago. And he said he had a very, very human talk about AI. And one of the things he said is that AI isn't the threat. Losing your human edge is the threat. And he talked about, he gave some very, very good case studies and examples of AI. And one of the things that one of the third case study that he described was how a company was using AI and a candidate applied into the company for a job. That application was received by an AI process, an AI workflow, and then it was handed off to another AI workflow for screening. And he made very little progress, not Albert, but the candidate he was talking about, made very little progress as a candidate because they got caught up in this AI vicious cycle. And I think that this is the risk that Albert was, one of the many risks that Albert was trying to articulate, was making sure that we use AI intelligently and that we don't lose the human side of the equation.
I think that's really vital, isn't it? And there was a famous case in the US, wasn't there? But one of the largest e-commerce businesses building an AI to rank candidates, but it learned from a decade of male-dominated hiring data and started favouring men and downgraded CVs mentioning women's activities. And so that changed afterwards, and that organisation is no longer doing that. But avoiding any human interaction is going to be a bad thing. One thing I always say to organisations is automate the administration, don't automate the relationship.
Yeah,
And so
very
keep the personal touch where it counts.
absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that. And that's going to come up in the next couple of minutes as we start going through the data. David sends back his thanks to you for saying hi and acknowledging him. All right, let's move on here and have a look at what we have next. So a place that I definitely go to understand what's happening in the space is LinkedIn. So around March or April of this year, LinkedIn came out with a 2025 Future of Recruiting Report. At least that's when it showed up on my mailing list. And I will drop the link to the full report in the comments afterwards. So this is something you can hunt on the LinkedIn website and get lots and lots of outstanding information about AI and how that's impacting recruitment and how it's impacting learning and so on. So let's have a look here at what LinkedIn is saying. So one of the pages out of that report, and I'll try to make this a little bit bigger, is AI deployment is accelerating. 73% of talent acquisition pros agree that AI will change the way organizations hire. And it is moving at a very, very fast pace. You can see here that on the left, LinkedIn, from their research, highlights the top expected benefits from using generative AI, or what's called GAI. So GAI means that you are starting to teach a learning module or you're trying to teach AI, you're training AI. General AI is when we would go to ChatGPT or Poe.com or DeepSeek and we ask it to help us write an email or grammatically correct something, or we might search for information on that tool. And generative AI is when you start to train that tool. Most likely, I guess the best way to describe it would be as a bot. You create an AI bot. It's actually an AI generative. It's actually a generative AI. It's not really a bot, but it would look and feel like a bot or a search engine. And you then train the AI to operate in a certain way. So when the top benefits and challenges of using generative AI in companies is you can see the statistics here that the hiring pros are saying 70% of them are saying it's improving hiring efficiency. 47% are it's boosting job post effectiveness. 39% expanding talent pools, enhancing the candidate experience, and increasing the quality of hires. But there are challenges on the flip side of that. One of them you've just highlighted is that when they trained the AI at that company, Damien, they trained it based on historical data that already had bias based into it.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was problematic for them, and they had to discontinue that use.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the other on the flip side, then the challenge is data privacy, security concerns, lack of budget, accuracy concerns, and uncertainty about where to start with AI tools. So a lot of people feel lost, and then legal compliance concerns. So in that case, if they where they trained the AI in that particular way, then the if they put that into a company elsewhere, a country elsewhere, they might really get into discrimination problems.
Especially in the European Union, I think in particular, the EU is highly regulated in terms of AI use in recruitment. And I think it's actually illegal in the EU to use AI purely to recruit. It's also not good practice, but I think avoiding any relationship element of that human element. But I think that absolutely there are regulatory challenges in itself using AI alone to recruit in the EU. But certainly, if it's going to discriminate against certain people, it'd be illegal in most jurisdictions anyway. So,
Interesting. So are they able to use any AI in those cases? I mean,
absolutely, they're
where
able to
can
use
they use
AI.
AI?
They are able to use AI in the EU, but it's quite regulated, and
Okay.
so there could be more compliance issues. And I imagine the concerns about legal and compliance would be considerably higher than that in the EU. What surprises me about these facts is the 73% who believe that AI will change the way organizations hire. I
Mm-hmm.
would expect that to be higher than 73%.
Mm-hmm. Well,
But
this
no, it's
it,
interesting. It'd be interesting to know how this was geographically, how this was impacted too.
yeah, I think this was that's a global statistic. So it's possible
Okay,
that maybe in where you are, because I think there's no doubt about it, at the Talent Connect conference in February in Singapore, the speakers were citing statistics, which were global statistics, and they said it would be, in some cases, the statistics would be 3 times higher in the United States because they said, in terms of the adoption of AI, it was moving much faster in the United States. It's probably similar to where you are in the UK and parts of the European Union. You're probably seeing a faster adoption. And then in APAC, probably seeing a slower adoption. I don't really have hard data on that, but I would suspect that Singapore might be further ahead because the people I was meeting from Singapore at Talent Connect were less surprised at the statistics, whereas the people from Hong Kong were more
interesting.
surprised at the statistics. And I think a year ago, when I did my HR survey that you and I talked about back in March, April here on the Horizon X, before we called it that, that one was called What's Ahead for HR. People had
Absolutely.
Organizations had big plans for a year later with AI. And what we've learned now from a follow-up pulse survey at the Asia HRM CHRO conference is that a lot of them have hit a wall at stage 2. So starting to figure out, and the difference between stage 2 and stage 3 is when you integrate workflows into your AI workflows into your existing workflows, which is much harder. It's easy to train employees on awareness around AI, how to use AI generally. It's the next step. It's easy to train employees on going into stage 2, which is when they create their own generative AI, or you have a generative AI within your department that you're using, for example, in the HR department or the talent acquisition department. But then when you want to start having it become part of a specific workflow, that's harder to do. And so the implication for this, I put this in as a footnote for for talent acquisition professionals, and one of those individuals is Nadoon, is listening in. The implication is that talent acquisition professionals need to develop both AI and human-centered skills to excel in evolving advisor-like roles. So we're fine, and one of the ways you can look at this is the benefits on the left-hand side that are making things more efficient, more effective, as long as you're making the right things more efficient and more effective, because ideally that would free up your time so that you have the ability to give candidates a more human experience. So if you can shorten a lot of the transactional minutia that happens around recruiting that takes up a huge amount of time because of the volume, then you can give candidates a more person, you have more time where you can pick up the phone and update a candidate with a real human voice, which I know matters to candidates.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be really important.
Yeah.
I saw a comment from David. Thanks for your comment about Japan. So David Sweet, by the way, is a very experienced recruiter running Focus Core Recruit in Japan. And he's saying that in Japan, it's really, really behind. I think it'd be really good to invite David onto the stage to join us at some stage, and him to join one of our live streams to share his experiences there. But it is interesting to hear that it's behind in Japan.
Well, feel free to, David, if you're feeling bold today, Damien, feel free to drop the studio link into David's DM in LinkedIn, and he can join us now if he's able to figure it out and come to the stage. Yeah. That's interesting, because a lot of times what we hear coming out of Japan is that Japan has aspects of industry where it's very technologically advanced and innovative and in an inventive society. So it's interesting to hear. And that's not the first time that I've heard that in the adoption of AI, they're actually slower.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the second time that I've heard that. So let's move on here to see what's next on this slide from the amazing things that LinkedIn shares with us. This one here talks more about, well, we haven't moved over to it yet. We're still on the 73%, aren't we? Yep. Okay, here we are, moving on to slide 8. Okay, so organizations. So organizations are getting serious about hiring the best possible candidates and measuring the results. And 61% of talent acquisition professionals believe AI can improve how they measure quality of hire. And what this means for people is by focusing on long-term value over speed, leveraging AI tools, and strengthening employer brand, then you can attract better candidates. And I would add to that you can actually give candidates a better overall experience. And that's another little takeaway here at the bottom, is that the best recruiters will become talent advisors who work with candidates in a human touch way, not working with candidates, well, in a non-system way. So they're actually able to talk to candidates, have more conversations with candidates on what's next for their career, what's the step that they want to take, and so on. So that's it's interesting that while we have this massive rush to technology, that the human side, more and more we're hearing about the importance of retaining the human side and the use of the technology. So we move on here to slide number 9. 93% of talent acquisition professionals believe accurately assessing a candidate's skills is crucial for improving quality of hire. Well, that's not a surprise.
I'd love to meet the 7% who don't believe that.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. But one thing that is happening is employers are they are becoming more skill-based in their hiring. So David has joined us, and we're going to invite him in here. Just hold on 1 second, David, while I get you in. David, you get top mark. Welcome, David.
Thank you for
Hey,
inviting
David,
me in.
how are you?
Glad to see you. Hey there, Damien. Nice to see you again.
You too. It's been a long time since
It
we
has been.
met in Tokyo.
It has been.
So great to see you here, and thanks for joining at such a short notice.
Yeah, David, maybe just tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Yeah, my background, I'm originally from the U.S., spent 10 years with U.S. government, moved over to Japan about 28 years ago, and fell into executive search and run a firm that focuses in back office recruitment, executive search in Tokyo since 2011.
Very, very good. Outstanding. And you made the observation that the adoption of AI seems slower in Japan. Do you want anything you'd like to add to that?
I think there's two things. One, for foreign capital companies, if they are bringing in generative AI from outside, from their home country, then it seems to be going all right. But for Japanese companies, it's very slow and it's very regulated. And so there's an apprehensiveness to take that up quickly. So it's quite interesting to watch that, and it's interesting to have conversations like this compared to what we do in Japan.
Interesting. And do you know what is behind that apprehension?
I think Japan's just very conservative. So I think what we'll see, because for example, ChatGPT's opened up offices here, and there's a lot of money going into generative AI. And I think what we'll see is that there'll be a strong uptake, but it'll be further behind other developed countries before that happens.
Interesting. Wow. That's fascinating. Okay, well, welcome and thank you for joining us today. Spur of the moment. You definitely get points for spontaneity.
Thank you.
If you go into your settings on Restream, you'll have an opportunity somewhere in there under video or settings. There'll be a general button for mirror my image, and it will flip around your Focus Core logo for you. Yeah.
In addition to professional experience, David's also the author of some very, very good books, one on sales and one on being a recruiter. So I'd recommend anyone involved in sales in any way, or anyone working in recruitment, to look at the books that David's authored about those. Very, very easy to read, but very practical and very powerful. So I've been an evangelist for your work, David, over many years.
Thank you for that. That's very kind of you.
Outstanding. Great. Okay, well, let's move on with our discussion here. We're moving through some slides here, David. You may or may not have seen this presentation from LinkedIn. So this one is talking about how there's been a move to more skill-based hiring, which I'd be interested to hear the two of you and your thoughts on that. You can see here the top skills increasingly required of talent acquisition pros is, again, back to the human side, relationship development, phone manner, and analytical reasoning, which I thought was particularly interesting. So this is why this at the bottom, we've got a little ticker going across there, highlighting the importance of talent acquisition professionals really becoming talent advisors to candidates, particularly candidates that once they start, getting long listed and medium listed, there's more interaction with the candidate, and definitely at the shortlist stage, to really make sure that they're going for the right role and for the right reasons, and that it's the right kind of fit.
I think it's really interesting. I think the two things I think the whole emotional intelligence is going to be extremely important, and the ability to develop those relationships and put time into the relationships of people who are being considered for roles. There's nothing worse than the feedback I've received from people who have applied to an organization and been selected for interview, but no human being has interacted with them whatsoever by voice, whether by Zoom or Teams, or even by picking up a phone call. I don't know if you're seeing that at all, David, in Japan, but I've seen in the UK, I've seen Hong Kong, in different parts of the world. there's immense frustration if they don't get any kind of human reaction whatsoever. And people know if they're talking to a chatbot, don't they?
Yeah. So it's the technology for us is not that prevalent, for one. And then Japan is always a high touch, it was because we're such a candidate short market. If you do get a candidate on board, you treat them with kid gloves, really, to get them through a process. And so whether it's an in-house recruiter or an external recruiter, they really do the best they can to usher candidates through. And so it's high touch always.
And also, Japan is a much more relational society and culture as well. Add
Yes.
that to the mix. Yeah, very, very interesting.
Yes.
And then one of the things that this series of the slides is in talking about the shift to skills-based hiring. And this slide represents the percentage of jobs from 2020 to 2023 where having a bachelor's degree was not a requirement. So from 22% to 26% did not require a bachelor's degree. And I am sure that that number has gone up even more because there's a lot of buzz around this, that the shift to skills-based hiring, there's a much bigger focus on, can this person do the job? How have they gone out and gotten themselves trained, for example, on AI? And what can they demonstrate that they can do in that particular space? And foregoing that they necessarily have to have that formal university degree. Are you seeing that, Damien and David, in your markets?
Dave, did you want to go first there, or shall I?
Yeah, sure. So in our markets, you wouldn't see that. What will happen, though, is we're importing more and more talent. And so because it's, again, a talent short market, we'll see the flexibility for decision makers to look at those people. But in the Japan specific market, someone without a degree, it'd be very difficult to bring someone in like that at this point.
Okay. And Damien, how about you?
I think in the UK, there's still a requirement for many organisations to have a degree, but in certain areas, for example, in tech, if somebody has a specific vocation qualification in tech and they can show they can quickly add value, then a degree wouldn't necessarily be required. But for many other areas, for example, finance, where I've done a lot of recruitment at executive level, people still need a degree and professional qualifications. So I think it'd be interesting to see the breakdown here between different types of roles as well.
Well, for sure, if you're a lawyer or a doctor, a degree is going to be required. Whereas in terms of areas where companies are expanding with innovating technology, pushing the envelope, there's many different ways you could get there in terms of acquiring those skills, and it might be less needed. Coming back to the adoption, Ahmad here says APAC is second only to North America in the race to adopt AI, and Madoon has talked here about candidate experience. Candidate experience in terms of wait time to close interviews is definitely going to improve. But on the quality of hire, curious to see how AI is going to improve that. Okay, we'll find out, I guess. And maybe some of the upcoming slides, we might be able to see a couple of companies that claim that they're improving that candidate experience. The next slide we have here, we start looking at what are some of those companies that are providing advanced AI tools. And I'd be interested to know, David or Damien, any tools that you're aware of, or if you have any that you want to add into this. And also for the people who are listening, please feel free to drop in any tools of your own that you're aware of. One thing I will just mention here about the skills-based hiring is that they shared at the Talent Connect conference in Singapore in February that LinkedIn Learning has seen a 6 times increase in demand for AI literacy skills. So there's a huge hunger to be learning on how to use AI. So let's jump into what some of these products are. And so in terms of applicant tracking systems, we've got 5 that are sort of considered pushing the envelope. Eightfold.ai, which uses deep learning to match candidates to jobs based on their skills, potential career trajectory, not just keywords. We have Phenom, which is an AI-driven talent experience platform for sourcing, engaging, retaining candidates. And Lever, which is now part of Employ Inc., which combines ATS with AI-driven candidate matching and engagement. And Greenhouse, which uses AI for structured hiring and bias reduction. And then Workday, which uses workforce planning and talent analytics. Now, the one thing I will say, as I was looking and researching these organizations, the one thing I will say is that in my former company, we were going through the implementation of an HCM system and had run over the course of 5 or 6 years several, actually probably even longer, because we had our legacy system that we tried to modernize. So we looked at a lot that was happening in the HCM, human capital management, HCM system across all the major players, Workday, Oracle, SAP being 3 of them. And then there was a couple of other companies that are coming up behind Workday, Oracle, and SAP. And as far back as 2019, in terms of bias reduction, for example, SAP already had AI in the background in their talent acquisition process, so that when hiring managers were entering their comments into the system, if they entered in a word that could be risky from a discrimination perspective or from a bias perspective, the AI would challenge them. And Workday has the same tool now, so that's been around for a while. AI has been around in that use for a long time. I think that the introduction of ChatGPT, the breakthrough of us having it now being available at a consumer level, is what's taken us to the next level.
It's interesting you mentioned Workday there as well. So that they acquired HiredScore, which has also came up as one of the good texts for this. So it's been interesting that other organizations seeing the benefits, some of these up and coming businesses.
Yeah, definitely. And David, are you seeing any use of applicant AI and applicant tracking systems in any of your ventures across the region or in Japan?
Not a lot. The challenge with internal TAs, for example, I was talking to someone last night that they have Workday, and it was a real challenge because it just wasn't relevant for what they needed to do on their team, and it wasn't compatible with some of the Japanese things. Just as a quick anecdote, I know when our company brought in we got a new CRM from the US, and it didn't have boxes for gender and age, and we had to request that to be put in
Hmm.
because it's still prevalent and important to hiring decisions in Japan. And so what I see TA teams doing in Japan a lot of times, they'll have these systems in play and they won't use it. They'll keep on using Excel spreadsheets.
Okay. Yeah, there's always that risk as well. I've heard similar case studies where a large system was implemented, a large, very big system, big branded system was implemented across the entire region. And when we heard that story in my former company, we were quite excited at the success. And then we said, how's the adoption rate? No adoption.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. But that was not in my former company. That was the case study that one of the clients was sharing, and when we were doing a reference check about the struggle they had with change management, with convincing people to adopt. And the reason for that was because in the company that they were in was, as much as it was a major multinational organization, it was a big brand organization. In terms of the way their organizational structure, their P&L was organized, and that type of thing, the country managers, country presidents, and MDs had a lot of autonomy on how they ran their businesses, which meant it was a lot harder to affect change management and convince them to go to a global model. Eventually they got there, but that took several years after the system was implemented. So basically they implemented the system at an APAC level, 1 or 2 countries, and then the next 4 or 5 years was getting the rest of the countries slowly migrated onto it. So these
It's
are,
interesting.
yes,
Yeah.
go ahead, Damien.
No, it's interesting how some organisations, particularly head office based somewhere in the West, not necessarily North America, but in the UK or elsewhere, might sometimes see Asia or APAC as a place where how different Asian jurisdictions can be. I did some work for global business in Malaysia once, and what was very interesting is the local hiring managers wanted to know the religion and father's surname of applicants, and that just wouldn't come up in many other places. But there, people generally wanted to know it, and there are obviously ways of balancing culture and ethics and what have you. But it's important not to see Asia as a monolith, but to realise how different jurisdictions can be,
Absolutely.
and in implementing something like this, to make sure, as David said, that you're looking into the local, what variance is going to be for local areas.
Yeah. And we've got a comment here from Akash, MD Akash. Says it's a brilliant, relevant topic. Thank you for that. The point about recruiters using AI replacing those who don't is spot on. It's a great reminder that AI is a tool to be leveraged, not feared. I'm particularly interested in the discussion of avoiding bias. Great. Thanks for that, Akash. And let's move on then, because one of these upcoming tools does help with bias. So in terms of AI sourcing and candidate discovery, there's HireTool, which is now called HireEase, AI-powered outbound recruitment platform with deep search across 45 plus platforms. And Seek Out, advanced talent search with diversity filters and skills inference. Fetcher, which was formerly known as Scout, now been renamed. AI-driven outbound recruiting, and Talent Bin by Monster, AI-powered talent aggregation from multiple sources. So these tools are obviously going out and they're hunting for candidates across multiple platforms and trying to find those particular candidates. I don't have experience with these. I do have a lot of experience with hunting because in my former company, we actually insourced executive search and built a small executive search team within our HR department while we were replacing some senior leaders who were retiring. I would imagine this might have helped us do that work much faster. We actually outsourced the larger searching and then used LinkedIn to contact the candidates. Any of you?
And I would,
this one, Damien or David? Yeah, go ahead, Damien.
so speaking over you there, slight time delay, I think, here in the UK, a bit backward. There's also Automatio and Tello, but I would also include LinkedIn on this. LinkedIn's automation tools are also very useful in this area. So I think that often it's combined with other tools, but I think, as you mentioned earlier, LinkedIn itself is also very good. So LinkedIn Talent Insights, for example, can give great value here.
I would agree with you 100% on that. And one of the things that we don't talk about in this presentation, and I'll mention it now so I don't forget, is that I've heard, in terms of coaching, I've heard a lot of organizations that are trying to create coaching tools, AI coaching tools, with various levels of success. And one of those organizations, which I think is having more success, is LinkedIn. So when people apply for a job through LinkedIn, they have the opportunity to use LinkedIn's AI coach to go through a mock interview, for example, and rehearse their answers to interview questions. And the AI coach will give them immediate feedback on how they're doing. And I think there's multiple models that are in the background that are assessing the candidate. So even energy and facial expressions are being assessed, and they get feedback not just on the content of their answers, but also on their energy and how they're presenting as a candidate. And there's other companies like Hupo that's doing a similar, looking into a similar model in broader training. But a lot of the other AI coaching tools, I've not seen something other than Neural Leadership Institute that's really been very, very strong. So let's move on to the next slide here, because we are coming up on the remaining 15 minutes. In terms of screening, HireVue provides AI-driven video interviews. And in my former company, we did use video interviews, but we didn't use any AI with that, not yet. We were toying with it. We did take some data and applied. We had an AI team in-house that looked at our data and made recommendations on how to change some of the parameters around the video data to try to make it more effective. And we were waiting for that sort of complete a full recruitment cycle before we could use that. Pyrometrics is one organization that I've been interested in for a long time because they have gamified competencies. So effectively, and the games are neuroscience based, but effectively what you do is you would have a baseline of competencies or skills or culture, like the Southwest Airline model, where they would be screening for candidates that have a strong customer service demeanor. So that everyone seems to be customer service oriented in the organization. And that's what Pyrometrics does. So you come up with a baseline, other competencies or behaviors or skills that you're assessing for, and then you turn those into a game. So the candidate applies, and they then, at some point in the hiring process, pretty early on, either right away if the company wants to, or after they've gone through maybe an initial screening and they've been longlisted, they then are pushed over to Pyrometrics and go through an online game, a short online game, not terribly long, but effectively it was an assessment tool that had been gamified. And we were quite interested in that in my former organization. Unfortunately, the sequence of circumstances on the planet, the number one being the pandemic, kind of sidelined our plans for being able to do anything with that tool. And Codility, AI-powered coding assessments for technical hiring. I believe that's where they can have candidates provide a coding case study. Like basically, it's like a AI assessed coding case study for technical hiring. And then Vervo, skills-based assessments with AI scoring, I think is very similar to Pyrometrics, but maybe not be as much competency-based. It's more skills-based. So either one of you seeing any of these or anything else you want to add to this mix?
There's another one called Ideal as well, which could analyze a vast quantity of CVs in a very short period of time. So Ideal is another one I've heard of that's been used that I've had good reports on.
And presumably you have to train it, obviously, for what you're looking for.
Yes, absolutely. These things always all do need to be trained. And I think it's interesting that one of these names on the screen did have challenges in the past with a large North American e-commerce business, but they looked to the challenges and they made changes. And I think it's the example I gave earlier about an organization may have certain views on them, but 6 months later what they offer is vastly improved. So it's interesting to see this.
Yeah, I think in one of my upcoming slides, we're going to name and shame that company by accident.
Oh, we are? Oh, gosh, okay.
We might, yeah, let's move on and find out what happens next. So now we're chatbots. So I think actually chatbots could be quite helpful for updating candidates on where they're at in the process of hiring. The only downside to that is you would hope that if you're using all these technology tools and you want your talent acquisition professionals to be more human facing, you'd be hoping that actually at this might be one of the areas where they can pick up the phone with extra time and be able to have conversations with candidates. But I guess maybe if you're doing high volume recruiting like a McDonald's or a Unilever, or even in the tech industry, for example, we had high volume recruiting happening in our engineering centers back in the day in Beijing and in Bangalore. It's possible that tools like this might have helped us to stay closer to the candidates and update them on where they're at in the process, and then at the right time the talent acquisition professional comes along and provides the human touch.
I think that's right. And I think with the example for Maya, I would say it's useful for pre-screening, not necessarily for screening itself. So I think it's very useful pre-screening, very useful scheduling. So a lot of recruiters' time is wasted in checking calendars and dates and what have you. So it's extremely good for things like that. And a certain element of candidate engagement. But I think once someone's been on interview with an organization, definitely want that human touch as well. What are your thoughts on that, David?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I sound like a broken record because last three slides, I'm just sitting here thinking, yeah, well, none of these are implemented. This is one at least that I see implemented, but mainly for applicant support to be able, when someone reaches out on that website and there's a lot of recruitment going on, to make sure that you capture that interest that might be there, and it's a low barrier to entry for an applicant.
Yeah, and probably an easy win if you're a company doing high volume recruiting.
But again, for us, it's still Western companies that are doing this. Not you see it with maybe some of the companies that you're looking to shame, or the McDonald's and Unilevers of the world, but not you wouldn't see it like Mitsubishi or Hitachi yet.
Not yet. Okay, good to know. That's very interesting to see that. Okay, we'll move on quickly to the next couple of slides. So this one, Midun might be interested in these. And Midun, if you have anything you want to add into this, drop it into the comments. AI for bias reduction in DEI. So Textio and Gap Jumpers and Dandy all have the ability to reduce bias or reduce unconscious bias. But the one thing I will add into this is, again, what I said earlier, the big players like SAP, Workday, and Oracle are already taking a lot of this functionality and putting it into their main HCM systems. So if you buy a full suite of HCM for Workday and SAP, for example, then once you're implemented, you have the ability to turn on all this functionality. And some of these players might end up getting purchased by some of these large companies as well. And then I think the last one here is the use of predictive analytics and workforce planning. So these are some examples: Visier, Skyhive, Fuel 50, and Checker and Crosscheck for reference checks. And again, for the first three, the predictive analytics and workforce planning, it might be very hard if you had a big Workday SAP implementation and you were using their HCM products, it might be very, very difficult to justify using one of these. They would have to have a pretty strong competitive advantage in order to knock the SAP or the Workday functionality out of the way. But actually, to our earlier points around adoption, some of the issues around larger systems like Workday, Oracle, or SAP is that they're not as customizable, that you're buying more of an off-the-shelf. It's, Workday might say they're highly customizable, or no, they would say they're highly configurable. So highly configurable. So obviously many companies are adopting them, so they must be. But if a company had a very unique way of hiring or sourcing talent, or had a unique way of wanting to predict talent or workforce plan in the future, then some of these other players might be suitable in those situations.
And I believe Eightfold AI can also do that as well, the predictive analytics side and workforce planning. So.
Okay, great. Another one to add in. And then emerging trends. So I think that we've probably touched on these trends. Obviously, more and more organizations are using generative AI in creating job descriptions and candidate outreach and for mapping skills. And another thing that we're seeing happening in the market, and I'd be interested in your comments on this, seeing a higher instance of skills bundling, where and this is kind of a little bit back to the earlier comment around, uh, employees with AI skills will replace AIs without AI skills. And what we're seeing in different markets is the concept of skills bundling, where organizations are looking for a mix of AI skills, human skills, and domain expertise in their specific area, whether that's finance, HR, IT, manufacturing, engineering. And then these challenges that are ahead are, I think, pretty predictable challenges. There are, and point number one there, bias in AI. I think the company you were referring to earlier, Damien, was Amazon.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And transparency. So a lot of the data that goes into these things, it makes it very, even if it's within a sandbox, as they say, so that the data is protected and you're assured of data privacy as you're working with your sealed AI. The data is still going into a bit of a black box, which makes auditing the data difficult. And human oversight. So it's great for AI to assist, but not to replace candidates. And I think that is a little ticker I got here across the bottom, that one of the things they shared at the Talent Connection conference from LinkedIn's conference in February was that the 5 C's, which were traditionally called the soft C's, are now actually the hard C's. They're hard skills, which are the communication, creativity, compassion, courage, and curiosity. And I think that's, well, closing comment, one comment for me, and then we can kind of wrap it up and get your views on the big picture here, is that we had some data we shared a couple of weeks ago, which talked about the power of getting people who are AI savvy to come in and work with you to help with adoption of AI technologies, which is one of the things that I can do. On my name card, I have a little term called AI guide, and people are always asking me, what does that mean? And well, what that basically means, in addition to management and coaching and HR consulting, also can help organizations get started into AI and guide them along the way and see how they go. So we are coming up here. We only have a few more minutes. So what have we missed? What would you like to add to the conversation, Damien or David?
I don't think we've really missed anything as such. I think that one thing I always recommend to organizations is focus on what the challenges are, not necessarily getting the shiniest tools. So it's interesting discussion about AI or AI adoption. Some organizations don't need to adopt everything and don't need all these tools. Some organization may have bought an ATS, for example, that already has some AI built into it, and they're not even using that properly. And yet they're looking to spend money on other AI tools. So in the work I do at Talent Diagnostic Solutions, looking at organizations' recruitment strategy and making that more efficient and cost effective, we'll often challenge where people are going to spend their money. And so, for example, they've got a shiny tool, they're not using it, they're about to spend money on another one. And sometimes it's look at what you have and how can you best use that. And also, just to emphasize again, automate the administration, not the relationships. Keep that personal touch where it counts to influence and engage with people. So I'd say that's my main takeaways. And apart from that, I'd say contact Talent Diagnostic Solutions if you'd like further discussion about any of this.
Sounds great. And that is a real human issue. I remember in a former tech company that I worked in, we were running PeopleSoft and had already been through a couple of upgrades of PeopleSoft and had the latest, greatest version of PeopleSoft happening. This was before Oracle bought PeopleSoft. And there was some functionality, though, that for whatever reason, a narrative got going that tech company did not have that functionality from PeopleSoft. And the senior VP of HR was saying, how is that possible? I've never heard of this before, that functionality is not in PeopleSoft. It should be in. Why do we not have that? And the general consensus within the organization was, well, we just never bought it. We've just never had it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this went on for a couple of months until finally they really got to the heart of the matter. And the heart of the matter, this wasn't related to the AI, but it's related to your point, Damien. The heart of the matter was that functionality wasn't turned on. So I can assure you that functionality got turned on very, very quickly. And it was something very rudimentary. I mean, it wasn't like online leave approval or anything like that, but it was some other very simple tool, handling out of cycle pay increases or promotions or something like that. But it can happen. We get lulled into human bias. We get attached to a story and we realize, well, actually the answer is right in front of you. You just need to turn it on. David, thank you for joining us today. What would you like to add for closing thoughts or insights?
I think I'd just echo what you said, Charles, about it's not whether you're using AI or not. It's that those who are using it will get ahead of those who aren't. So we're seeing that in Japan so much, that those who are embracing it, finding ways to get around or get through regulations and hold the integrity of the systems and the laws in place, are doing much better. And then my recommendation would be, so for our finance and accounting people, really enjoy Perplexity as a tool, because it's much more analytical than, say, a ChatGPT, for example, for what they're looking for in the research.
And is that tool easily available to you in Japan?
Yes, it's free online. You can get, and I think the pricing is the same as, say, ChatGPT as well.
Okay, very good. Yeah, it's available here as well in Hong Kong, but ChatGPT is not unless you're using a VPN.
Really interesting.
Yeah, you have to establish a VPN to use ChatGPT, but Perplexity is available. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you both for joining, and I hope that people found the discussion valuable. We got a farewell here from Madoon, and thanks, Madoon, for joining us. And if I'm ever in Bangalore or your neck of the woods, I'll definitely look you up, Madoon, and likewise if you're ever in Hong Kong. And the same for you, David. If you do come by through Hong Kong, let's connect and have that human conversation, face to face. All right. Thank you, everybody. This is Horizon X, over and out until next week.